anywhere. There's some things here that are going to be almost untranslatable, but we're going to deal with them. So let's go ahead if we want to start the, what do you call it? The streaming, the transmission, the global outreach? We're good, okay. So there are a couple of handouts on the back page, back table. One handout is from last week. It says Psalms 107 to 119. You might already have that one. The other one says Psalms 108. You don't have to have the handout in front of you to be in this class. This class is also recorded and is archived. So if you're one of the people who like to hear things rather than to read things, it's there for you, sort of, I guess, I don't know, archived forever. There are actual people in other cities that are tuning in this morning to hear this. I don't know what it says about their judgment, but let's go ahead and get started. Last week we introduced this section of Psalms 107 through 119, saying it's divided into three sections: restoration and community, the messianic Psalms of David reborn, and then finally the Egyptian Hillel. So this morning we're really going to be focusing in on Psalms 108 to 110. If you remember last week, we talked about Psalms 107 being a psalm of the restoration of community of sort of four different peoples. The peoples who were lost and wandering, the people then in their lost condition wandering. If you remember, they were thirsty, they were hungry, and God provided them water for their thirst. But instead of good food, remember that God just provided the good, the agathos. People who were in prison, whether they were behind bars, or was it a prisoning of, what do you call it when people are very sad? Depression and anxiety. There were those who were rebellious and who sort of mocked every good thing. And then there were those who were just at sea, just kind of lost, and the storm was coming in. This was a psalm of redemption, but also a psalm messianic expectations, because the redemption, remember, was then rendered in the aorist tense, the tense of a verb without a horizon. So now let's look at 108. And let's just begin reading in Psalm 108, see where it gets us. Psalms 108. Psalms 108 begins with a rejoicing because of the deliverance of community that we saw in 107. And it starts out, "My heart is steadfast, O God. I will sing and make music with all of my soul. Awaken the harp and the lyre. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples, for great is your love, higher than the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and let your glory be over all the earth." So that's how Psalms 108 begins. It's also a literal copying, word from word, of Psalms 57, 7 to 11. It is word for word 57, 7 to 11. It goes on in a completely different sort of tone and says now, "Save us and help us with your right hand, that those who love you may be delivered. God has spoken from his sanctuary. In triumph I will parcel out Shechem, and I will measure out the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, Ephraim is my helmet, Judah my scepter. Moab is my wash basin, and upon Edom I will toss my sandal. Over Philistia I will shout in triumph. Who will bring me to the fortified city? Who will lead me to Edom? Is it not you, O God, you who have rejected us and no longer go out with our armies?" What an odd sort of phrase to include in that. That God, you are going to deliver us to all these people. Who? Because you don't go out with us anymore, God. "Is it not you, O God, who have rejected us and no longer go out with our armies? Give us aid against our enemy, for help of man is worthless. With God we will gain the victory, and we will trample down our enemies. With God, we will gain the victory and we will trample down our enemies, hence messianic. This again is word for word copied from Psalm 60, verses 5 to 12. Now, when we looked at Psalms 57 and Psalm 60, these are miktam songs of Diatherio. And hopefully that's not Greek, well, I guess it is Greek, to anybody that we studied extensively both miktam and Diatherio. Remember, Diatherio is corruption through slander from my enemies. Enemies being important here. But then what's the difference between the presentation of these words in miktam Diatherio Psalms and repeated word for word here within the context of the deliverance of community and the hope of a Messiah? What's the difference? The difference in text isn't this latter section of 5 to 12 or 6 to 13. It's what happens immediately before those particular psalms. So Psalms 108 is a messianic psalm. Psalm 64 is a Diatherio, miktam psalm. And I think the key to seeing the difference, the key differentiator, is actually in Psalm 60, verse 4. Psalm 60, verse 4 is one of those interesting translations. So 65 begins with, "Save us and help us with your right hand, so that those you love may be delivered. God has spoken from his sanctuary. In triumph I will conquer all of these people for you." But the verse right before that is 60, verse 4. "But for those who fear you, you have raised a banner to be unfurled against the bow." Huh? What's that mean? For those who love you, you have raised a banner to be does that mean your banner is going to protect us from the bow? So let's drill a little bit deeper and see what some of the various translations have. Norma, you have your King James open. King James says something completely different. "Thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee, that it might be displayed because of the truth." NIV says, "For those who fear you, you have raised a banner to be unfurled against the bow." Truth or bow?
I have another one here.
Oh, what do you have?
This is the Common English Bible, and it says, "Give a flag to those who honor you, so they can rally around it safe from attack."
So this is interesting. So they can rally around whatever this banner, this sign, this flag is, so that they will be safe from attack. Okay? How is truth like a bow? Now, this is not like a bow on a present. This is a bow like you're going to shoot somebody with an arrow. How is truth like a bow? Kind of several different ways, right? You think about it for a minute. An arrow shoots sort of straight.
And it's piercing.
And it's piercing. What else? I mean, those are good. Any other way that truth is like a bow? One thing is, when you're confronted with an enemy holding a bow and aiming it at you, it's sort of a moment of truth. There's no more denying what's right in front of you. It is what's happening. Now, the interesting thing is those are a couple of different meaningful translations. I kind of like the Amplified here. The Amplified said, "You have set up a banner or a sign or a flag for those who fear you and worship you reverently, to which they may flee from the bow." See, what's missing in the text that we have translation here is actually the translation directly from the Septuagint, which is, forgive me for this, fugo apo prosopon toxin, that you may fear, so you're given a sign, to flee away, to flee and seek safety, the fuego, to flee and seek safety away from the face of the bow. So this isn't a sign that you can hide behind. This isn't a banner that is going to protect you. This is a sign that says, run, now, away. So this is a little bit of a hard teaching because we like to think that God is always going to be on our side. He's going to lead us to victory in battle. But is there ever a time in the Old Testament where God said, no, don't go up and fight because I'm not with you? Can you think of any time, any context in the Old Testament where that took place? Jacob, you're walking in just in time. Any context in the Old Testament? I'm not putting you on the spot, but chime up if you want to. Any context in the Old Testament where God said, no, I'm not with you. If you go into battle here, you will get whooped. Yeah, when? In Numbers 14. The spies came back and they said, oh no, these people are too hard for us to take, except of course for Joshua and Caleb, right? Joshua and Caleb says, with the Lord's help we can do this. But the people rebelled and wanted to turn back to Egypt. And so Moses said, okay, you don't want to go? You can just stay here in the desert for 40 years and die here. And then the people said, oops, we will go up. We will go up and we'll fight this enemy. And Moses said, you're just not hearing God because God is not with you. And in Numbers chapter 14, they really should have listened because they got whooped. So here what I think is happening in Psalms 60 verse 4, that there's a clear differentiator here in Psalms 60 compared to Psalms 108. You have given those who fear you a sign to fuego apo prosopon toxin, to flee away. And so is this Psalms in 60, not in 108, but in 60, a messianic message? Well, it kind of is, but the messianic message in 60 verse 4 is not you, not now, not here. You see, it's exactly the same words, but the context is the key. After the restoration of the four groups of people, then it becomes a context of, the Messiah is going to have us triumph over our enemies, but in the Miktam Dioptherio Psalms, no. You have not honored God with your slander, and so it is not you, not now, not here. But in Psalms 108, it is completely flipped. It is that the people have been restored, and now the expectation of the Messiah is, yes, he will lead us to all of these places. Now, where are we not going with this? We are not going with the speculation of who the psalmist believes this Messiah is, because there is in the literature the idea that this particular Messiah is John Hyrcanus. Who's that? Well, he's one of the Maccabeans. And the idea behind this is, well, it was in the Maccabean period where Judah actually pushed back the enemies on all of these fronts, north and south, both at the same time, sort of the only place that the king, the Messiah, does this. Well, I can think of one other Messiah who does it, so we're not going to go there. We're just going to stick strictly to the text. So now let's go to 109, which is also a messianic psalm. Let me get back there. And let's read Psalms 109. 109 is also called, in some circles, the revenge psalm. I prefer to think of it as the betrayal psalm, and it begins this way. O God, whom I praise, This is not exomologio. This is, O God, whom I anio, who I praise, who I have a storied praise from, my story. Okay? As opposed to the group praise together that we exomologio. I've kind of beat that up enough in previous classes. O God, whom I aneo, do not remain silent. For the wicked and deceitful men have opened their mouths against me. They have spoken against me with lying tongues. Here again, the recurring theme of slander. Doesn't say slander, it just says lying tongues. With words of hatred, they surround me. They attack me without cause. In return for my, what? Friendship, they accuse me, but I am a man of prayer. They repay me evil for good and hatred for my friendship. Now let's unpack that, because there's a lot of nuance in the Septuagint here that does not come through in the NIV. First of all, with words of hatred, they surround me. This word for surround me is kuklao. It's also the word for they besiege me. They have surrounded me in order to siege. So it's a military term. I'm going to surround you and I'm going to attack you from all sides. So what's saying here is these people are besieging me. They're attacking me from all sides. With words of hatred, they surround me. They attack me without cause. So everybody translates this, they attack me without cause. But if you look at it word for word, what is literally written here is, with words of hatred they besiege me, and they war against my gift. That might have some important meaning theologically. Everybody textually translates it as they attack me without cause. But literally what they're doing is they're making war against my gift. In other words, there's no reason for you to do this. I've given you a gift. Why are you making war against my gift? In return for my what? What do you have in your Bible? What do you have? Love. Okay. Inexplicably, NIV translates this as friendship. Every other translation translates it correctly as love, because the word here in the Septuagint is agapeo, love. Not only love, not a philios love, not a brotherly love, but a godly love. So what they're doing is, in return for my godly love, they accuse me. But what do? I'm a man of prayer. They repay me evil for good. Good here is not Christos. Good here is agathos. Where else have we recently seen agathos as good? Remember the guy that was lost in the desert? And in order to fill him, God filled him with good things? No. God filled him with good. And here, in return for my love, they accuse me, but I am a man of prayer. They repay me evil for agathos and hatred for agape. So just that little twist there. These are profoundly important words. These are extreme words. It's not just love. It's not just, hey, we're buddies. No, you're repaying my godly love. It's not just good, Christos, hey, it's a nice day. It's ultimate good. Now, we're going to get into verses 6 through 15, but before we do, I want to bracket that section. So the top bracket is what we just talked about. The bottom bracket is in verse 16. They wage war against my gift. So next page. Let's get to verse 16. because I think it brackets what's in between. For they never thought of doing a kindness, but hounded to death the poor and the needy and the brokenhearted. Well, that sounds pretty bad, but it doesn't sound nearly bad enough. Because what it says here is opposite neomai, or how do you pronounce that? Neomai, to produce kindness, opposite of whatever this word is, to produce kindness. He hunts down people that are poor and helpless and pierces their hearts to death. So thinking about the extreme meaning of that, different than they hound the needy and brokenhearted to death, they hunt down the poor and the needy and pierce their hearts unto death. It's this piercing of the heart that's sort of extreme. Now what this is, this neomai is a compound word meaning to abide, right? To abide, to stay with, to hang on, abide with me, fast falls the eventide, and to chew. So to chew on what's abiding with you. So what should be abiding in your heart to help the poor and the needy, instead of that, you hunt down the poor and needy and pierce their hearts to death. So now let's back up to Psalms 109. Remember, what's key here is remembering that this is a messianic psalm, because it I wonder, doesn't sound like it. In return for my love, they accuse me, but I am a man of prayer. They repay me evil for the agothos and hatred for my agapeo. So in response to that, appoint an evil man to oppose him. Let an accuser stand at his right hand. When he is tried, let him be found guilty. May his prayers condemn him. What just happened? We just had a flip from they to he, from plural to singular. Why? What just happened? Why is there a shift from they plural to he, him singular? What's going on here in the text, do you think? Now, there's no answer to that. Well, there's an answer to that. This is, what do you think is going on? This isn't a trick question. What do you see in this shift from plural to singular? And if you don't see anything in it, that's fine. I will explain why you don't see anything, and we'll go on. Or I'll explain what you should see in it. Who is this? Are we talking about a person? Are we talking about a group? Are we talking about a period of time? Okay, this is clearly a person, right? This is clearly a him. But before this, it was clearly a they. They, him. So is this talking about sort of the ringleader of the theys? Or is there sort of this culture of theys that's sort of, without regard to this person being a ringleader and an instigator, they are against me, but here's a person in particular who is particularly against me. Now, remember that this is somebody who has been betrayed by someone they loved. This isn't the slander of an enemy. This is the betrayal of somebody that they've shown godly love to, and now we're talking about that person. We're talking about that him. So why appoint an evil man? That seems kind of non-biblical, non-godly. You're going to appoint an evil man. Appoint an evil man to oppose him. You're going to appoint an evil man to oppose an evil man. Huh? Any thinking about that? And if you don't, that's fine, we can move on. But that seems kind of odd, doesn't it? Wouldn't we think, appoint a just man to condemn an evil man? Why are we appointing an evil man to oppose an evil man? Let the accuser stand at his right hand. The evil man who is the accuser stand at the right hand of the evil man. When he is tried, let him be found guilty. Okay, that makes sense. And may his prayers condemn him. Huh? How is it that his prayers, the prayers of the betrayer, who is an evil man, condemn him? How is prayers a condemning thing? Any thoughts on that? This is kind of loaded with places to think, isn't it? How would prayers condemn someone? What are you doing in prayer? You're telling God what you really, really want? Is that what you're doing? No? I need more people in this crowd. Norma.
Well, it makes me think of the Pharisee that was praying, oh God, thank you that I'm not like him and that I have done all these things. I. And Jesus says that's his reward.
So what Norma is saying, for those of you who are tuning in and can't hear the crowd, the Pharisees, when they prayed to thank God that they were not like this poor person over here. And so Jesus says, well, that person has their reward. So you're seeing in this a kind of a Pharisee's sort of prayer of revealing exactly who you are, right? So that tells you who you are. You're very thankful that you're not the poor person who's being hounded to have a pierced heart to death. I think there's a lot of validity to that. Okay, then let's go on. Let's go ahead and read the balance of 6 through 16 and think, are we talking about retaliation? Are we talking about justice? Are we talking about something else? Because it gets kind of harsh. May his prayers condemn him. Verse 8. May his days be few. May another take his place. May another take his place of leadership. May his children be fatherless and his wife be a widow. May the children be wandering beggars. May they be driven from their ruined homes. Ugh. May a creditor seize all that he has. May strangers plunder the fruits of his labor. May no one extend kindness to him or take pity on his fatherless children. May his descendants be cut off, their names blotted out from the next generation. May the iniquity of the fathers be remembered before the Lord. May the sins of the mother never be blotted out. May their sins always be before the Lord, that he may cut off the memory of them from the earth. For he never thought of doing a kindness, but hunted the poor and powerless until their hearts were pierced by death. So that's why I wanted to bracket that. We have this really bad guy on the front end. He's the really bad guy on the back end. But does he deserve all this stuff? This is pretty bad stuff. What are we talking about here? Is this justice? Because he's godless and he's cursing. See, it says in verse 18, he wore cursing as his garments. His cursing entered his body like water and his bones like oil. So he filled himself up with cursing. And so is it justice then that he's cursed in every way possible? Is that a sense of justice? Oh, I don't know.
I think it's kind of interesting that he's not asking for help against this person. Like, he's not like, give me power to overtake this person, right? He's asking for this to happen to this person, but not at the hands of him.
So what she's saying is, it's interesting that he's not asking for help from God.
No, he's not. Yes, keep going.
But rather, he just wants this stuff to happen. He just wants God directly to hurt this guy.
Right, not at his hands, not David. We're used to David.
Right,
I assume David is going to go.
so this
after
he
this person. Yeah.
isn't going to do it. He wants God to do it.
Yeah.
Anita.
I'm going to tell you about 3 things that I've learned from my favorite preacher, Bible scholar, and shepherd. One of them is that we all think that we are the innocent in our own story.
So, number one, we all think that we're innocent in our own stories and we're the hero.
Things go bad, we look for our own biased confirmation of our own innocence.
And when things go bad, we look for biased confirmation of our own innocence. That's number one.
Number two is that we all have flesh flashes. We all want God to show up and to vindicate us for the things, pointing to myself here, that we think that we have had to endure and be misjudged by. And we don't want to get our hands dirty, but because God is God, we know that his hands won't get dirty if he does the thing that we ask him, as though he were some sort of genie for us. Long, long time ago, when I was a very young believer, young mom, and young preacher's wife, and my husband was a family minister, the minister of that congregation had a very difficult time sharing love, sharing people, and sharing service. And to anybody who had an eye, was very quick to try to discredit, to set up and to set my husband in positions where he would be shamed.
So I'm hearing that
Congregation.
one of the other people on staff would slander this other minister in order to maintain a sense of being in charge and in control. That's what I'm hearing you say.
And I said to David, let's pray this. This is good stuff. And it's got your name on it. Let's do it. Let's pray about smashing teeth and houses and all these things. And David said, Anita, here's what we're going to do. If our enemy is hungry, we're going to feed him. If he's thirsty, we're going to get him something to drink. When he curses me, we're going to figure out a way to bless him. And what I am going to do is I am going to pray hard that if it is him, that God will show them it is him. And if it is me, God will show me that it is me.
So I love that, but in this case, he's not saying that. He's not saying, oh, if your enemies, did this or that. It's like, no, you're done. David.
Because our hearts cry out for justice for us. And I believe that the psalmist is just speaking what all of us speak. We want our justice and feels that God is not doing what we feel he should be doing. So we're commanding him to do it.
So this is the aspect of justice here. Okay? And I'm not saying you're wrong, right? But maybe whoever this guy is, he's in a completely different league. Maybe this guy is somebody to whom no mercy can be shown. I'm just saying, maybe. And then maybe this is about something else entirely. So it looks like retribution, it looks like justice, and it certainly fits those models. And if that's what you're thinking, yeah, okay, I get it. It kind of works for me too. But if it's about something else, what else could it be that it's about? Well, one thing it could be is a stark warning. Don't be this guy. Don't be the person who betrays the love of somebody and make war against whatever that gift is. The gift is undefined. It just says you're making war against the gift, right? Don't be that guy, because if you are, this stuff's going to happen. If you make common cause against the righteous by aligning yourselves with the ungodly, don't be surprised when this stuff happens to you, because you made common cause. You made friends with bad people, and bad things happen. Don't be real surprised by that. So maybe it's not even a he who's being cursed. Maybe it's don't be this guy, because if you're this guy, it will happen. Or completely flip. Maybe it's not a general case of somebody who betrays a loved one. Maybe it's a specific case about a specific he, about a specific person. I don't know. Maybe it is, because listen to this. Where does it say it? May his position of leadership be taken by someone else. Didn't I read that somewhere? Verse 8. May his days be few, may another take the place of his leadership. Can we think of anybody whose place of leadership was taken by someone else? Who? Judas. Oh, okay. Well, let's keep that thought. Read through the rest of the psalm and see if it makes sense that this is a psalm which in some sense is talking about Jesus. Okay, so we'll pick up at verse 19. He wore cursing as his garment. He entered his body like water, into his bones like oil. May it be like a cloak wrapped around him. Curses may be a cloak wrapped around him, like a belt forever around him. May this be the Lord's payment to my accusers, to those who speak evil. And now we've flipped back again from singular to plural. So now we're back to those who speak evil. But you, O sovereign Lord, deal with me for your name's sake. Out of the goodness of your love, this is now goodness Christos and love Elios. This is now happiness and kindness, rather than the agapeo that we saw earlier. For I am poor and needy, and my heart is wounded in me. Does that sound like something anybody's ever said? For I am poor in spirit, and my... kind of sounds like that to me. I fade away like an evening shadow. I am shaken off like locusts. My knees give way from fasting, and my body is thin and gaunt. I am the object of scorn to my accusers. When they see me, they shake their heads. Have we read something like that anywhere before? Help me, O Lord my God. Save me in accordance with your love. Let them know that it is in your hand that you, O Lord, have done it. They may curse, but you will bless. When they attack, they will be put to shame, but your servant will rejoice. My accusers will be clothed with disgrace and wrapped in shame as a cloak. A cloak. Where have we seen a cloak before? Well, we have cloaks all the time, right? But at the crucifixion, what happened to Jesus' cloak? They wouldn't tear it. They cast lots for it. So they're going to be clothed by it. But that clothing of whatever that means is going to be shame and in disgrace. Now, it ends in an interesting way. With my mouth I will greatly ekemolagio the Lord. This is the ekemolagio, the praise of community, of sustaining and creative praise together. I will ekemolagio in the great thong. I will anio him. So I will both personally praise him with my story, and I will also sing together with the community of sustaining and enriching praise. For he stands at the right hand of the needy one to save his life from those who condemn him. So, as a psalm of the Messiah, messianic, I see a lot of Jesus in this. I see a lot of Judas in this. I see a lot of condemnation for those who would betray the Lord in his godly love that he's extending, and they make war against that gift. Have you ever known anybody to make war against the gift of God's love? Yeah, we all have, right? So anyway, that's Psalms 109. Let's move on to Psalms 110. Now you'll notice that in each case I've said Psalms 109, a messianic psalm. Get ready for it to say something different. You ready? Psalms 110, a messianic psalm. Duh. Okay, everybody knows that this is a messianic psalm. In Jesus' time, when Jesus referred to this psalm, even the people who he was talking to understood this as a messianic psalm. So what it says here is, the Lord says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make an enemies the footstool for your feet. The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion. You will rise up in the midst of your enemies. So this has a tie to Psalms 108. Extending the mighty scepter from Zion, we're going to enlarge the kingdom. Now, Jesus refers to this. Peter refers to this. This is clearly referring to Jesus, no question. Kind of don't even need to have any discussion about this particular passage. Do I have any discussion questions? No, I do not. But then now let's look at where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean difficult. Until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet, the Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion and rule in the midst of your enemies. So far, so good. Your troops will be willing in the day of battle. Arrayed in holy majesty from the womb of heaven, you will receive the dew of your youth. From the womb of heaven, you will receive the dew of your youth. What in the world does that mean? This is virtually untranslatable. We have the words dew, womb, morning, and youth. But when we put them together, what does it mean? No. If you pick up the class synopsis for this morning, you will see that I have provided some number of translations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, about 28 different translations of this verse in what I've handed out. It doesn't help. So there's basically sort of three translators' opinions, translators who wrote translations to the Bible opinion. One says, your young men will come to you like dew from the morning's womb. Your young men will come to you like dew from the morning's womb. Kind of makes sense because the context is your troops will be willing to do battle. Young men will come to you like dew from the morning's womb. In other words, young men prepared for battle will just appear. So you'll have all of these men appearing, and they'll be youthful, and they'll be vigorous, and they'll just appear from the womb of the morning like dew. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. It causes me a little bit of caution when I realize that that's what the paraphrased versions of the Bible say. For example, the Good News Translation. Like the dew of the early morning, your young men will come to you on the sacred hills. So the young men will come like the dew. Out of nowhere, your troops are just going to show up for battle. Okay, that makes sense. I get that. But is that what it says? Another group of translations, for example, the Aramaic Bible says, from the womb, from the first, I have begotten you, son. That's completely different. Okay, same words, different group of translators. Here you have Aramaic translators saying, from the first, from out of the womb, I have begotten you, son. The Britain Septuagint translation says, I have begotten thee from the womb before the morning. I have begotten thee from before the morning, before there was ever a first morning, I have begotten you, son. So it's saying then the Messiah, this guy who's going to be enlarging the kingdom, is somebody who is born of God before the beginning of the world. Okay, that makes a lot of sense too, religiously, but does it make sense in the context? Is that what this verse is actually saying, or is that maybe something that we wanted to say? So I've given you 25 different translators. You can think about that yourself, and you can kind of, you can think about what you think about that. Yeah, Norma?
Well, dew, womb, morning, youth, that all sounds like rebirth.
Ah,
Like,
hold that thought. Dew, womb, morning, all sounds like rebirth. And so, take this a little bit out of order. Yeah. It is Helen Jefferson, and I have the notes quote in my handout. She translates this that the idea here is that this passage is a fragment of a Canaanite cultist passage that was associated with a celebration of the rebirth of the king. And it was a Canaanite celebration that every morning, every New Year's Day morning, before the dawn, they would get together and celebrate a rebirth of vigor to the king. Sounds like dew, sounds like morning, sounds like energy, sounds like rebirth. And so this is a sort of a cultic ceremony enacting the rebirth of the king. That could make sense in this context.
Or could it just be referencing a new creation?
Or could it just be referencing? It could be a lot of things. Norma.
Well, what I see, it's a messianic psalm, so it's about Christ being reestablished to his position of glory forever.
So it's a messianic psalm about Christ being established in his mission forever. Yeah.
So in my translation here, that whole passage, that part of that verse is all in quotation marks. Do we know where it came from? No.
Unless it's referring to a Canaanite cultic passage. Now, so what I told you about the Canaanite,
So it could have just been a single phrase.
Yeah.
Not that it's actually referencing it, but it could have just been like, I'm pulling something from culture.
it's sort of stuck in here as a bridge piece, talking about a messianic king being reborn, culturally understanding that the Canaanites had this service every New Year's Day morning before the dawn, and so we're camping up on top. Could be, okay?
In the very next verse, there's again another quotation about Melchizedek.
Okay, now we're going to get to that right now. So what we've been looking at in terms of the paraphrase translations is, in the day of battle, the new warriors will come to you out of nowhere. Just like the dew of the morning, they'll spring up and you'll have them for battle. Or this is a king who comes out of nowhere, which is Melchizedek, which is the very next verse. And this is also in the notes from a different scholar, William Brown, who translates this as, in holy splendor out of the womb towards the dawn go forth. Huh? Go east, young man. So it's really difficult to understand what's going on here. But in context, it is also directly linking the battle where the young men will appear as dew with the Lord born out of the womb before the first morning of time, also coming out of nowhere, like Melchizedek. So in its ambiguity of translation, it forms this sort of bridge between the battle of the young men being there for you when you need them, and where did this Lord person come from anyway? He's a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, who has no beginning and no end. No idea where Melchizedek comes from. He just kind of comes out of the air. So that's kind of difficult to deal with. It's kind of a very difficult passage to translate. Now let's get to an equally obscure passage, which I think has a much more definitive translation. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are priests forever after the order of Melchizedek. The Lord is at your right hand. He will crush the kings on the day of his wrath. He will judge the nations, heaping up the dead. He will be crushing the rulers of the whole earth. And he'll drink from a brook beside the road. Huh? Does that he will drink from a brook beside the road fit the rest of that passage? Doesn't seem like it to me. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know. You start reading commentaries, they'll explain, oh, well, look, he's drinking from a brook. Despite the conquering that he's going forth, he takes a moment to refresh beside a gentle brook. Okay. If you think it means that, I'm happy for you. Of all of the translations that I cite, there are two translations that translate this word brook as torrent. And it is, in fact, in the Masoretic texts and in the Septuagint, a torrent. a winter river, something that's rushing, something that's powerful, a torrent. So do you have in mind sort of a gentle brook, or do you have in mind something that's raging waters? Okay? Does that change the meaning? Brook versus torrent. What it says in the Septuagint, he drinks from the brook along the way, or he drinks from the tempest along the way. And so in the translations, it always says, so lifts up his head, right? But in the Septuagint, it is specifically, he drinks from the tempest along the way, so upsao kephele, upsao. What does upsao mean? Does anybody remember what upsao means? What's that? I heard somebody say something.
Oh, I said it sounds like an accident.
Sounds like a what? Oops. Upsao is what Jesus said when he was talking about the manner of death that he would have. When he said, if I be upsao, I will draw all men to me. If I be lifted up. Upsao means lifted up above the earth, so the waves, upsao, a boat above the waters. The ark was upsaoed above the waters. But typically what it means is it means exalted. Exalted above the highest heavens would be upsao. So what this is saying, literally, in words, it's saying he drinks from the tempest along the way and so is exalted in his head. His head is exalted by his drinking from the tempest. So what do we mean by drinking from a tempest? So here's this tempest. Here's this chaos raging around him. And he draws energy from the chaos. He's not intimidated by whoever these people are that are conspiring against him. He's not slacking in his ability to do what he came to do. In fact, in the face of the torrent, he upsaos his kephele. He glorifies God in his drinking from the tempest. That's where it lands with me. Okay, and you can pick up my outline back there and you can read through my reasoning on that. So a couple of things that are not in the outline, because once I write things down, I don't stop thinking about them, was the interpretation of the war on the gift, making war on the gift. The word gift in that instance is not translated by anyone as gift. It's all without reason. But I find it, with respect to everything else that we've been talking about, a key understanding that these evil people are making war on the gift of the salvation of God. And then when we read of all of those cursings and things, we maybe shouldn't be surprised that whoever is making war on the gift of the salvation of God has put himself beyond redemption. God is offering redemption. You don't just ignore that. You make war on that. Okay then, Judas. I really don't know what place you have in all of human history if you don't just... Now, remember, Judas was kind of a unique experience, right? He was a unique individual. He had been with the Lord for 3 years. He had seen everything from the beginning. And John tells us that the reason he betrayed Jesus was because he was a thief and wanted the money. It wasn't, I'm really going to just help Jesus fulfill his destiny here. That wasn't his plan. So that's it for the messianic portion. I think what's important is if we remember 108, 109, and 110 are all messianic psalms and try to understand them together, that takes us somewhere. Next week we'll pick up with the Egyptian Hallel, the psalms of praise for the deliverance out of bondage. And at some point we might even ask, how does that relate to the messianic psalms? I'm done. Do y'all have any questions or comments? Oh, that's not a, that's a comment. That's not a question. Okay? So we're good. Thank you all. This week's, no, one more thing is if you're online and you want some of the handouts, just let the church know and we'll get them to you.